VR4, Carolyn, it seems to me that Connie has stated that that's essentially what Native Americans are talking about, walking in trust, walking with the Creator, walking with the Creator's creations, and knowing that you are a part of and not separate from. Isn't VR4 plus basically what Christ was talking about?
Yes.
What Buddha has been talked about?
Every religion
Nirvana.
has described
Every
it.
major
Yes.
master is talking about living in VR, where you are the listener, the teacher, the giver,
Right.
the lover, the creator, the synthesizer, and you're is that, I mean...
That's exactly it. And it's, before we understood how unified field theory comes down to the individual, then spiritual enlightenment was, for the most part, an individual thing, and it took a lot of living to get to the point at which you began to understand that you were having a major effect on your life. And we are in fact creating it on such an instantaneous basis that we are not even thinking to look where we need to see that it is. But when you understand how you're doing it, then you can absolutely experience the ongoing creation of your own life. You know, time stops because there is no time in VR. There's only perfect timing. And it's the universe wants us to understand this. It wants us to meet the basic needs of every being on this planet, because until we do that, we are not safe. But because we are all each unique versions of the one being, the is, or the creator, or whatever you call it, God. And that's like a computer version, software version. In other words, you've got this basic hardware and software, and it starts out with empty programs, and you put in all your data and configure your computer, and it's uniquely yours. And Connie's would be very different. It'd have different things in her computer. But the structure and the way the system operates is the same for every being, including animals. And so when you realize you don't need to ever be a perfect human, you are already born a perfect version. There are no perfect humans. And that's the problem with CD mode, is we're setting a standard of perfection that cannot possibly be attained. And so you can never get the reward. Also, we're competing with each other so that one person wins. Think of the Olympics with all those marvelous athletes who, scattered around the globe as they are, can serve as inspiration for kids everywhere for athletic art. And we send them all to one place. They all train together for years for this, and only one wins, and the rest are losers. Now that is a ludicrous situation with athletes that great.
So in VR4 Plus, there is no hierarchy?
No, there's total equality and perfect balance. It's complete freedom, autonomy, and choice. Your own choices whenever you choose, if you choose.
Let's talk about choice for a minute.
Can I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, but a grandmother, because I asked her, I said, does this thing have a leader, you know? And she said no. And I said, doesn't that mean there would be anarchy, given how we think, you know, that people are going to go out there and grab power and grab, you know? She said no. Each person will stand next to each other and bring his piece of the hoop together, and we will all fit our pieces of the hoop together spontaneously, and that will create the hoop of life. You see, so it's the same principle, but in the Native American point of view, and so I just wanted to point that out of another way of describing this VR, where there are no leaders there, and everything is spontaneously happening in a beautifully balanced, perfectly balanced way.
And I had another idea too when you were talking. I don't know too much about physics, but I do know a little bit quantum physics, and it always is interesting to me because it relates exactly to the things that I have understood. And when you're talking about the VR mode, I think of the holographic universe, which
That's
is
what it is.
really supposedly, I mean, when these guys have studied the universe, they're saying that that one mind or divine consciousness is being these us, and this world that we're seeing is really holographic.
Yes.
Or holograms. And so in a sense, we are just the images and the likeness of that
one.
That one. And so that's why when you're talking about that, I think it's really interesting how it's like you were saying, it's exactly what the ancients have said. And when we look out into our world, I think it's very important. You were saying, how do we use this in a practical way? And I think it's real important. If we can understand that oneness, then we begin to treat our world with more of a reverence, a sense of concern and understanding that, because we're understanding that everything we're seeing is really myself. Everything that is out there is you, and you are really me, and I am you, and we're all one in that sense. So there would be no inequality with that understanding of that oneness, and that what is in my heart will be reflected in my world. And so then you have a desire to do the highest of the most virtuous, or the highest or the noblest that you could do in order to create a world that was reflecting that beauty, let's say.
It's interesting that it actually is so easy to create the world that you're talking about. In my arena of endeavor, the environment and natural resources, it is not difficult to create, for example, waste recycling systems that incorporate whole life accounting, that incorporate a very basic principle that of the system, of the universe, and in this case of natural law, that one organism's waste is another organism's food. We separated ourselves from that very simple, basic principle. And there are systems out there that do operate like that, that can shift the way, that can right the relationship with nature, and consequently right the relationship of economics as well.